Prospective clients sometimes ask us, what is your vacancy rate? Of course, they want to hear a low number so they can feel confident in our services. But my expected answer is, we don't compute an overall vacancy rate because it doesn't make sense. But for your rental, it will be either 0% or 100%. So let's talk about days on market. In this video, we'll take a deeper look at vacancy rates, and I'll share my view on why it makes no sense to talk about vacancy rates for single-family rentals, but a lot of sense to talk about days on market. Hi there, I'm Steve Schultz with Blue Fox Properties in Tucson, Arizona. We specialize in managing rental houses. So let's get right to it. So first of all, where do vacancy rates come from? So vacancy rates were initially developed for individual apartment buildings as a metric to help drive profitability. I'm not exactly sure when, but maybe this goes back to caveman days. But in 1956, the U.S. Census Bureau began the Housing Vacancy Survey. This survey provided the first quarterly national benchmarks for rental vacancy, and it allowed landlords to compare their performance against regional and national averages for the first time. But keep in mind, the survey was for apartment buildings, not individual rental houses. Rental houses weren't even considered an industry back then. In fact, as recent as about 15 years ago, there was very little industry data on single-family rentals. So keep in mind, vacancy rates are designed for apartments, not single-family rentals. So the next question is, how do companies typically compute their vacancy rate for single-family rentals? Well, the simplest and fastest way to do this is to divide the number of available rentals a particular company has by the total number of rentals in their portfolio. So if a particular company manages 200 single-family rentals, let's say, and they have 10 on the market currently, they might say they have a 5% vacancy rate. But for some companies, they'll compute it differently to get a lower number. But as I will explain in a moment, the vacancy rate really doesn't matter much anyway. So for any single-family rental, the vacancy rate will be 0% or 100%. So what are the typical vacancy rates you'll see advertised? I have typically seen vacancy rates advertised between 1% and 5%. I don't recall ever seeing a company advertise something higher. I've certainly never seen anybody advertising a 50% vacancy rate or anything crazy like that. The intention of the advertising of a low vacancy rate is to impress would-be clients, to show them what a great management company they are, or to create a sense of urgency for the would-be residents. Hey, hurry up, apply now, we only have a few left. That's kind of the idea behind that. So how do you apply a vacancy rate to your rental house? So let's assume the vacancy rate is 5%, just like the example we just calculated. Does that mean that you'll get 95% of gross potential rent for the year? No. Does it mean you will only have 18.25 days, which is 5% of 365 days, of vacancy each year? No. Does it mean you can have your house 95% occupied? No. And the list goes on. So unlike apartments that are mostly the same within an apartment building, all rental houses are very different. They're different sizes, different amenities, different locations. Some allow pets, some don't. But perhaps the biggest difference is they all have different owners. And those owners have different goals, different risk tolerances, different rental philosophies, unlike the apartment complex or apartment building that has one owner. So if an owner that wants to set a rental rate aggressively low so they can rent the house fast, they're going to rent that house faster than the owner that overprices his house to, they call it, test the market, right? So here again, remember, for any single-family rental, the vacancy rate will be 0% or 100%. So if the vacancy rate doesn't matter or doesn't help, what's a better metric to look at for single-family rentals? And the answer is days on market. Once you know how long to expect your rental house to be on the market, assuming it's priced correctly, then you can make some meaningful calculations. This will also give you a solid number to compare against how quickly the property gets rented. So using the median or average days on market for similar properties, you can compute how many days of vacancy to expect on the front end getting the property leased initially and during resident turnovers. As a result, you can estimate the amount of money these vacancies will cost over time as it relates to lost rental income. This will also help you understand why keeping a good resident in place for as long as possible is good business. So spending $200 on a resident request today that you may find annoying or trivial may save you $2,000 down the road. In summary, I encourage you to stop thinking about vacancy rates for single-family rentals and start focusing on days on market. If you found this video helpful, subscribe below for more landlord tips like this.